Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Pringle. I'm from the Member Relations Division here at GRESB. Apologies starting a couple of minutes late. It's an early morning here in Amsterdam. We're just getting everything together, but better late than never. So welcome to this year's second town hall. It's the second time that we've had a foundation town hall where we talk about the upcoming standards changes and also get an update on the foundation itself. So that update will come from Sarah Walton this year, GRESB Director of Foundation and Stakeholder Engagement. And then we'll be moving on to the 2024 standards changes, which will be provided by our Infrastructure Director, Jos Blaemeyer, followed by our Real Estate Product Director, Charles Van Thiel. Then in the second half of the event will be led by Kevin Kirby and Anna D'Souza Peter, who will be answering a lot of the questions that have come through the registration page. So we've got a whole lot that came through, so thanks for those questions, but also some questions live. We're just fixing up the live question chat. So once that's ready to go, please put your questions in that chat and they'll be fielded by, as I said, Kevin and Anna, but also myself and Aidan will be able to have a look. So Aidan, we're all part of the Member Relations Division here. You've probably seen our names, heard our voices before. Well, I hope so. So we'll do our best to get through a lot of those questions, but times probably won't permit us to answer them all. But what we will be able to do is get back to you via our member success team if any of those questions aren't answered. And also, one other point there is that many of the questions have a fair bit of overlap. For instance, building certifications or energy intensities in real estate. That was a pretty hot topic. So we've done our best to combine some of those questions. So you may not see your questions word for word up when we show those on the screen. Then before we get started, I just want to highlight the events that we had this year. We had 23 GRESB events, almost all were in person, and we have 6 remaining throughout the year. And I think the most of those 6 are in APAC, maybe 3. I think we actually have an event in Kuala Lumpur right at the moment. And I just want to make a call out to our APAC members who, out of the 23 events, they hosted 14. So that's a huge, huge effort, especially from our partner members, but also our team in APAC, led by Ruben, Trey, Pooja, and Kartik. So thanks to everybody who's been involved in that. So yeah, it's been a really successful results season in 2023, and it'll conclude on the 13th of December in Seoul. So if you still like to attend events, have a look on our webpage and you'll be able to have a look at the last 6 events that we've got scheduled. Okay, well, I'd like to hand over to Sarah now, who is going to give us a foundation update. Thank you. Over to you, Sarah.
Hello, my name is Sarah Welton. I'm the director of the GRESB Foundation. It has been a full and exciting 2023 at GRESB, and we're happy to have all of you here with us to close out another year of sustainable market transformation. Today, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the foundation and how my team supports its governance of the standards. Then, I want to introduce the 2024 roadmap and talk about the near and long-term priorities for the standards. And finally, I will offer a friendly reminder that GRESB relies on your engagement and input to support the continuing development of the standards. The GRESB Foundation is an independent, mission-based nonprofit organization dedicated to owning and evolving the GRESB standards. The Foundation's mission is to support effective communication between institutional investors and managers, empowering them with timely, relevant, and high-quality information to help drive sustainable improvements in the management and operations of real assets. The result is better, more valuable real estate and infrastructure assets that benefit people and the environment. The Foundation is made up of a hierarchy of advisory groups, including the Foundation Board, the Real Estate and Infrastructure Standards Committees, technical working groups, and expert resource groups. This year, these more than 100 elective and active members spent countless hours reviewing and evaluating improvements to the standards, which are ultimately approved by the Foundation Board. Several of my colleagues and I, including the Chief Innovation Officer, the Chief Product Officer, and heads of real estate, infrastructure, and net zero, help ensure these critical volunteers are supported throughout the standards annual review process. You can read more about the Foundation, including its structure and mission, in the recently published 2024 roadmap. The roadmap also provides insight into the Foundation's near and long-term priorities for the standard. The high-level development drivers are leadership and innovation, operational performance, standardization and alignment, policy and regulation, and data quality and interoperability. These drivers underpin how GRESB plans to continue to move the real asset industry forward toward sustainable value creation. An explanation of the current GRESB standards assessment structure is also included in the roadmap. We explain how the standards work in concert with other industry frameworks to reduce reporting burden. We also explain the short-term work plan for both the real estate and infrastructure standards, which my colleagues Charles and Joss will discuss later in greater detail. The roadmap will be updated on an annual basis to continue to provide you, our global stakeholders, greater transparency into the standards development process. My team and I hope you find it useful in explaining the importance of the GRESB Foundation and how it operates to evolve the standards alongside critical support from the industry. Speaking of industry engagement, we also help you take the time to engage with the Foundation to support the continuing development of the GRESB standards. We rely on your participation in the standards committees, technical working groups, and expert resource groups to ensure the Foundation considers global input as they evolve the standards. Please follow us on LinkedIn, sign up for our newsletters, and check out the website regularly to make sure you have the latest information on GRESB. We also include our call for applicants to join each of those Foundation groups through those mediums. You're welcome to reach out to foundation@gresb.com if you have any questions related to the Foundation. As we close out the year, I want to offer a big thank you to the Foundation members who have volunteered hundreds of hours to ensure the GRESB standards remain independent, mission-driven, investor-led, and reflective of the real asset industry. And thanks to all of you. Your engagement is what makes the standards work, and your participation and support are what drive sustainable market transformation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Before we move on to Joss and Charles, I just want to update everybody that the chat function is ready to go. You just need to refresh your page. So if you give that a go, then start hitting us with questions. Our team's ready to answer. Thank you very much. Over to Joss.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joss Blomeyer, Director of Infrastructure at GRESB, and I also serve as the Secretary to the GRESB Foundation's Infrastructure Standards Committee. Today, I'm thrilled to share with you the latest developments for the 2024 GRESB Standards for Infrastructure. We've recently published these changes to help our participants prepare for the launch of the next round of GRESB assessments, all kicking off on the 1st of April, 2024. Before delving into the specifics, I just want to express my thanks to all our members who've provided invaluable feedback throughout the year, and your insights, whether through formal conversations at the GRESB Foundation and at the standards committees, or through general feedback from our membership throughout the year, have been really instrumental in shaping the progress we've made. So the first exciting news I want to bring to you all today is the introduction of an entirely new assessment, a new standard for infrastructure development assets. We've taken on board member feedback from the last few years and recognise that we did have a critical gap in our existing infrastructure standards to better cater for pre-operational assets. The introduction of the Infrastructure Development Asset Assessment and Standard is our response to this need. These new standards are industry-backed and fully approved by the GRESB Foundation. They also align with internationally recognized frameworks for assets in development and address some specific considerations, including things like material selection, site selection, life cycle considerations, and of course, risk assessments during project design and construction phases. And for those familiar with GRESB, this new standard also incorporates many of the elements from our existing GRESB standards that remain relevant to pre-operational assets. I'm also really pleased to say we've worked hard to ensure the assessment is flexible and accommodates assets in both the construction phases and pre-construction phases through alternating scoring weights depending on what is material to you. In terms of the impact on scoring, at the asset level, the new assessment operates in the same way as our current asset assessment does. Simply, if an asset's in the pre-operational phase, in pre-construction or construction, that asset should now take the new development asset assessment, and that will generate a separate benchmark report and score. At the fund level, there's now an addition, so we can move from the potential of 1 overall score to 2. The first score we all know is the current GRESB fund score, which combines our fund score and an aggregated score of any underlying assets taking the existing asset assessment. And now we have the introduction of the GRESB Fund Development Score, which combines, again, the fund score and an aggregation of the underlying assets taking the development asset assessment. Importantly, in all of this, we've retained the ability to grant a grace period for assets undergoing this assessment for the first time. And for 2024, assets in development can still be excluded from the overall fund scores if managers choose to do so. Now, aside from our new assessment, we've also made a range of enhancements and changes to the existing GRESB standards. You'll see a continued focus in these changes on net zero, which remains a priority for our members and the GRESB Foundation. And this year, for the first time, we're introducing the ability to report data coverage against existing year Scope 1, 2, and 3 GHG emissions at the asset level. And this data coverage will be rewarded for Scopes 1 and 2 if full data coverage is reported to us. And that really encourages enhanced data quality and encourages people to report as much data as possible. And the more data we have, the more we can do with that and the more we can manage things. As an additional change for all performance indicators, we'll also now only show intensity data for performance data when we have full coverage for each indicator. Again, this increases the comparability and accuracy of our performance data. Furthermore, again, on data quality, benchmark reports in 2024 will also indicate where this data has been verified or assured, providing additional confidence to investors. Sticking with GHG emissions, updates to guidance on reporting Scope 2 emissions has taken place and will be introduced in 2024. And we're now going to offer only 2 options for reporting Scope 2 emissions, location-based or market-based. This again ensures consistency with what's reported and means we can better compare data. Still, in relation to climate and in line with the influential TCFD framework, we've introduced climate-related opportunities to our assessment alongside existing content on climate-related risks. So overall, points are now awarded for a range of processes related to the TCFD framework, such as assessing a strategy's climate resilience and conducting impact assessments for both climate risks and climate opportunities. And these changes not only align with TCFD, but also bring us closer to the recently introduced IFRS ISSB standards, which build upon the work started with the TCFD. And finally, we've introduced a number of more minor changes across the assessment. As is the practice every year, we've introduced these changes based on member feedback and also based on internal reviews. They address things like content errors, content duplication, removing elements which are deemed to no longer add value, and also enhancing alignment between the assessments we have and also alignment with other frameworks. Specifically, some changes relate this year to topics such as leadership, risk management, supply chain, and employees. So, in a nutshell, those are our 2024 details. Full information on the background to those changes, their impact, and the scoring implications can be found on the GRESB website now. So please do dig into them and get in touch if you have any further questions on them or want any clarifications. We'd be pleased to have a conversation with you. And looking ahead now to next year's work and the 2025 standards, we've got a lot of exciting projects in the pipeline. These include a continued major focus on net zero, building on the initial work done this year by a net zero working group. We are kicking off a number of projects which are emerging from that work, and we hope to make significant changes for the 2025 standards. And we're also going to continue our focus on improving the quality, relevance, and accuracy of our performance data. Again, building upon some changes that have kicked off this year. And we're also keen to gather feedback on our new development asset standards, of course, and to make any required changes based on the experience we have in this first year for that new assessment. As always, your voice is crucial in the development of our standards. And the GRESB Foundation, as an independent body, wants to hear more from you and wants to hear from across the infrastructure industry and across sectors, whether you're an investor, a manager, or just an interested stakeholder. So thank you for your contributions and your continued engagement. We will continue to aim to improve our infrastructure standards into the future and work with you more. Thank you very much.
Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Charles Van Thiel. I'm Director of Real Estate at GRESB, but I'm also acting as the Secretary to the Real Estate Standard Committee, or the RESC. The RESC is a committee who is responsible for maintaining and developing the real estate standard over time. And so as Secretary to the group and on behalf of the GRESB Foundation, I'm very happy to be with you today and to provide you with an overview of the 2024 changes affecting the real estate standard. Before we move on to the actual changes, I would like really to refer to some key documents. And the reason why we believe it's actually important to refer to those documents is the fact that we will not have the time to go through every single change impacting the 2024 standards, simply because there are too many. There are 16 in total. So these two documents, the GRESB Real Estate Standard List of Changes, as well as the Summary of Changes, for which both URL links have been provided at the bottom of these slides, are quite critical if you're in any way involved in the reporting process, in the GRESB reporting process every year. We strongly encourage you to have a look at those documents and dissect really what is relevant to know for next year. For example, the detailed document provides some information about each change, the rationale, where it comes from, why is the ESG topic relevant for the GRESB Foundation. And each change obviously comes with a description of how the scores is impacted next year, how the reporting process is impacted as well. So what new data metrics are required, new data points are required. If something that is no longer required, it's not just about adding new things, it's also about removing some content sometimes. And when applicable, some of these changes are also visualized in the way they appear in the reference guide and in the assessment in the GRESB portal. So at a glance, there is 16 changes in 2024. 8 are deemed general and 8 are minor. And I'll go back to what minor means later in this presentation. 11 impact the GRESB score and 5 do not impact the GRESB score. However, it's also important to recognize that the changes that do not impact the GRESB score may be seen as signals to the industry that things may impact the GRESB score in the future. So don't ignore these. I think these are important as well and show what's happening behind the scene as well. And finally, 9 are specifically impacting one indicator, respectively. And 7 are more methodological and can impact a variety of indicators that really affect the models behind the scene. So the first change I'd like to introduce you to, and I'm very proud about this one actually, is about energy efficiency scoring. And I'm sure a lot of you in this call will resonate with the fact that the standards, the GRESB standards, have had for a long time the vision to transition towards better recognizing and scoring operational performance of participating real estate portfolios. And as a first kind of a step towards that vision, in 2024, the standard will introduce a new section in the benchmark report for all participants that will provide scoring insights of the energy efficiency of these portfolios. Important to note that these scores will not be directly linked to the GRESB score. And the reason is that's actually intentional. The reason is to put the methodology out there to the industry so that the industry has the ability to review and to anticipate how those scores could impact their portfolio and their reporting entities in the future. And we'll also be using this period to collect, to extensively engage with industry and collect additional information in order to further refine the methodology. So it starts with energy efficiency, because energy efficiency is very much seen as a key pillar of net zero, being the top priority for the standards and the GRESB Foundation. But you can expect such kind of changes to also impact other metrics in the future. The second change that I'd like to introduce you to relates to a topic that I'm sure a lot of you in the call are familiar with. It is building certification. And important to know that building certification is also a very high priority for the GRESB Foundation. And this change is the first change of a longer series of other changes on which the GRESB Foundation is currently working on. For example, there will be a working group dedicated set up in 2024, aiming to revise some of the criteria that building certifications that the standard are using to recognize certifications. But this is the first step towards a longer series of changes. This change particularly takes its roots in the fact that the GRESB Foundation has established that building certifications do lose relevance over time, which means that a very old certification has less relevance than a very recent one. And currently, the GRESB standard does not appreciate the age of certifications. And so as a result, in 2024, there will be a new data point required from all participants, which will be reporting the certification year for all reported schemes by participants. And the scoring model of GRESB will then use that year as a data point in order to refine the scoring model, resulting in scores that would be then considering the age of certification. So essentially, we're talking about introducing a time factor in the scoring model, and this time factor will act as a scoring multiplier and will be as a function of certification year. A bit more information on what that time factor is. This table says it all. It's actually incomplete. It goes a bit further than 7 years, of course, but that's just a snapshot, and you're welcome to go to read the full documentation if interested. And more information will be following later this year, earlier next year, about the actual methodology that was followed by the GRESB Foundation to come up with those numbers that you see in this table. But just a few words here. Important to note. The first one is that these, as you can see on the table, these scoring multipliers have been determined separately per building certification type. So design, construction, operational, and interior. And in some cases has actually gone quite into the details, relying on empirical evidence as well. Details, when I say details, for example, the design, construction, building certification was actually further broken down into sub-elements of a design and construction certification. For example, planning, construction, and commissioning within this certification have been considered differently in order to calculate the final scoring multiplier. So if you're interested, stay tuned, because more information will follow on the underlying methodology. But for the time being, all participants are now able to get an idea of what those time factors are. The third change I'd like to introduce you to relates to more granularity in the benchmarking and scoring methodology of the GRESB standards in 2024. It really takes its roots in the fact that up until today, the granularity of the benchmarking approach has not been deemed sufficiently granular enough, especially from a geographical perspective. And in an effort to provide more granular benchmarking insights and more accurate scoring results to our participants, the 2024 standards are introducing country as a geographical factor in the benchmarking and scoring methodology, so that participants will benefit from more granular benchmarking and scoring results, not only leveraging the property subtypes of the portfolios for benchmarking purposes, but leveraging property type and country. So this change will actually impact a lot of areas of the standard. It will impact energy, greenhouse gas, water and waste, as well as building specifications and energy rating. There will be additional output as well in the benchmark report to reflect those changes, as you can imagine, and that still needs to be developed for next year. Last but not least, this is not a change per se, it's more of a process that has resulted in multiple changes, but I'd like to introduce you to the concept of a tactical review, which is something that the GRESB Foundation has initiated in 2023 for the first time and will continue in 2024 and beyond. And the purpose of this process is very much to address potential content duplication and to remove them from the standard. Identify any areas that result in unnecessary reporting burden for participants. Certainly something that GRESB Foundation is very much aware of in an effort to reduce reporting burden over time. This process aims to review that and identify unnecessary reporting burden. Another criteria is to try to promote scoring differentiation in order to really differentiate, best-in-class leaders from the rest. As you may be familiar with the GRESB model, where all the scores, the cloud of scores have gradually gone up right over time. There's clearly a lack of scoring differentiation observed by the industry and by the foundation, and this process aims to promote more differentiation, and also leveraging on alignment opportunities with other standards or with industry practices. So I'm not going to go through each row of this table, but maybe what you will observe very quickly if you skim through it is that some of the changes actually refer to the removal of some areas of the assessments of the standards. Some indicators have been removed, or some part of the indicators have been removed as well. And some of the changes either introduce new scoring weights or reallocate scoring weights within indicator to better reflect best practices, reflecting the criteria that I mentioned above at the top of this slide. This is it for the changes 2024. However, as a final note, it is important to know that in addition to the changes that we just went through, the GRESB Foundation has a very exciting already work plan for 2024, which will then impact 2025 standards and beyond. And I can tell you that it's actually quite exciting because a lot of these areas that the foundation is working on are fully in line with the strategic direction of travel for the standards. I mentioned earlier transitioning towards performance-based, or better measuring and recognize performance in the standard is something that really is impacting a lot of areas of the standard development process. There is a lot of work to be done on more sector specificity. For example, a lot of work done on residential real estate in order to ultimately better cater for that sector that many industry members are mentioning that the current standard does not fully cater for, is not fully relevant to. And of course, a last thing I wanted to share with you is a lot of work happening on data quality in general. It is clear that investors' expectation in terms of data quality are increasing year by year, and a lot of work is happening to make sure that the appropriate checks are implemented, and that participants are challenged exactly on the most material issue to result in as high as possible reliability of data. That was it for today. I'd like to thank you all for listening first, and also remind everyone on the call that none of these work is possible without your input and your continuous support. So if you do want to engage with us and share your thoughts, share your experience, this will certainly be considered in the process and will inform, prioritization and how things get developed over time. So please do not hesitate to engage with us at any point in time. This is always welcome. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be based. My name is Kevin Kirby. I'm part of the member relations team at GRESB, focusing on real estate. I've been with the GRESB team for about, 4.5 years now. So been around the block a few times and happy to be taking everyone through the questions part of the Foundation Town Hall today. I'm also joined by my colleague, Anna. And if you want to just say hi to everyone.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna. I'm also part of the member relations team, and I focus on supporting our infrastructure participants. And happy to be here today and help answer your questions.
Great. Thanks, Anna. So we had a number of questions submitted in advance of the call during the registration process. I also encourage everyone to submit questions in the chat. So we have a couple of GRESB team members who are looking at the chat in the bottom right corner of the event. So please post them there. We'll be looking at them as we move through kind of the pre-submitted questions. I'll also kind of give just a bit of insight and oversight just as to some of the topics that a lot of the questions were asked around. So as I move through the questions, again, please feel free to pose them in the chat, and we'll try to keep it as dynamic as possible. And we'll just kind of keep it going until we close those out. So with that, I'll kind of kick off the next part of the segment. So it should be the correct slide now around energy efficiency, basically. So one of the larger changes for real estate is really looking into energy efficiency. As Charles mentioned in the previous segment, we will have a new section called basically this energy supplemental score, supplemental insight. So the score itself will be separated out from the GRESB score. It will not affect your GRESB score. So really, this is something that is not going to really affect how you present your GRESB results in 2024. In terms of the impact and how this will be evaluated, so the first part of this question, this is still under discussion at the Real Estate Standards Committee and will be published as soon as possible once that methodology is finalized. When looking really at this energy supplemental insight, some things we could be looking at is what normalization factors we want to use around the energy intensity and the way that that's presented. That's still currently under discussion. Of course, we'll publish that as soon as that's finalized, but we did give insight when we published the list of assessment changes as to this will be introduced. It will not affect your score. It will just be published as a supplemental insight. Some of the things that could be in terms of the normalization factors, we could be looking at what's the minimum vacancy rates, what's the minimum data coverage that needs to be presented for the assets to qualify for the supplemental insight. So that's still all something kind of being, discussed during the standards committees over the coming weeks. And then the last question, how will the tab efficiency measures at the asset level be changed? This will not be changed for 2024. One of the only change really to the asset spreadsheet is around the operational versus non-operational energy consumption that I'll go into in just a bit. I think that covers it in terms of the supplemental energy insights. Moving to the next slide. So this is around operational and non-operational energy. I'll give a bit of insights into what this means on the next. So maybe I'll actually go first just to present what the change is, and I'll come back to this one. So what we're doing in 2024 is we are actually going to begin isolating non-operational energy from operational energy. Really, this comes after a lot of feedback, direct feedback to the GRESB team around isolating the EV charging, essentially, and capturing this in a different section of the asset spreadsheet. So what we'll be doing is adding a new column at the end, similar to the way that outdoor parking and consumption is captured now. This will be added. This will be a new column in the asset spreadsheet to capture this non-operational energy. Essentially, what's been happening is if there was EV charging on site, the consumption related to the EV charging would just be, added into the typical utility fields. But of course, that makes the asset look as if it's consuming more energy. Of course, the asset does consume more energy, but it's related directly to EV charging, and we want to separate that out. As of course, we want to encourage more EV charging within assets. Looking at the questions around this, as I mentioned, it will be bucketed separately. In terms of the percentage of ownership in the asset, I guess that's less relevant. It's really just It's captured in a different column. Scope of non-operational energy. Currently, this is defined as EV charging. I know that the real estate team is currently looking to other types of non-operational energy, such as that related to machinery and industrial property types, but this is something that could just be related to, typical property operations. So we're currently investigating this, and we'll be coming back to those that have asked questions around this, around what additional non-operational energy consumption types are. Yes, we will be reporting mandate. Of course, you don't have to report the data separately, especially in the case where it's not sub-metered. It's more of, if you have access to this data, you have the actual splits, it should be split out if possible. Moving into the next slides around building certification. So this is one of course, the larger changes for the 2024 assessment. And basically, we've introduced the time factor. So this is something that Charles spoke about in his session just a minute ago. So I'll cover this, then I've got a couple more explanatory slides on this as well. So in terms of how the score will be calculated after adding the time factor, we're currently finishing the aggregation logic, essentially, as to how this will be best presented to our members. So there'll be more information coming on this with our next publication of kind of additional methodology and reasons as to some of the changes that are happening for the 2024 assessment. In general, I'll show you the table on the next slide of what happens over time to certifications, because there's a lot of, with time factor being introduced in the scoring logic, that's something that, of course, we want to address and properly disclose as to how best that will be presented in the GRESB results. So in terms of building certifications and changes to certification levels, basically the validation statuses that we assign to certification, those will not be changed for 2024. So the same certifications that were full points or partial plus in 2023, it will be the same for 2024. So there won't be an updated list. The only updated list that we can, of course, provide is if new certifications are submitted to GRESB for evaluation. So that will be, of course, we want to update that list as new certifications are submitted to us for review. Looking at the next slide, we're seeing, just making sure that everything, is right. Okay, great. Building certification age over time. So this is basically the scoring logic and how time factors introduced into scoring logic over time. You can see that we have different time factors per certification type. So we have design and construction, operational, and interiors certifications. Something that, of course, the way certifications have been presented into GRESB so far have been that, a design and construction certification from 2008 has had the same weighting as a design and construction certification from 2022. Of course, over time, a certification may have less weight or less impact on how the asset is operating, or especially from a design and construction certification perspective. Design and construction certifications, with buildings in 2008 are not the same as buildings in 2022. And certifications have different versions, different rating systems over time that, of course, improve the sustainability of the asset. So it definitely makes sense that we're actually, moving farther away from, as certifications get older, they have less impact in the assessment. I think that's probably it from a design and construction certifications and time logic perspective. I'm just checking the questions. I don't see any on this specifically. So I'll also move to the next table, which is around basically the change in how we accept certifications within our system. So this is around really when certifications count. Basically, what's happened in the past is the certification had to be active during the reporting year for it to be valid within GRESB. So for example, for 2023, the certification had to be implemented by the year end of 2023 and had to have been achieved by the end of 2023 prior to submitting it for next year's assessment. What is the big change this year, and this is really due to a lot of certification bodies potentially having delays in their certification process, as long as the certification is submitted for review prior to the end of the reporting year, but the certification is achieved prior to the GRESB submission deadline, that can now be submitted for review. Submitted to count for the GRESB assessment. This table and really all of this information that I'm speaking about now is in the list of assessment changes. So that's something that can be reviewed, of course, on our website. And this is where this table is coming from. Just checking other questions. Yeah, I'm going to leave those for the moment. The next one is around energy ratings. So this is something that's really specific to residential assets, but can apply to different property types. So basically, for the multiple energy ratings change, which is a change we've introduced after specific residential sector engagement, now we will be able to report multiple energy ratings per asset. This is not just specific to residential assets. So if it is specific to other property types, please, you can contact our member success team at info@gresb.com just to make sure that everything is captured and that they're reported correctly, but it does not just apply to residential. Moving to the next slide around basically data input, and this is around percentage of GAV per property subtype. So I think these two are really related to the change that Charles was talking about of country level benchmarking. So the way that benchmarking has been working in the past is Office High-Rise Europe has been benchmarked against Office High-Rise Europe. Industrial Distribution Warehouse Americas has been benchmarked against Industrial Distribution Warehouse Americas. What we're doing now is this is actually being moved down to a country level in terms of the scoring logic. So this means Dutch Office High-Rise will be compared to Dutch Office High-Rise in terms of data coverage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're really taking this down from regional to country. What this means, though, is that within the actual reporting process and the data input process, there will be additional fields that need to be captured so you can best represent this in your portfolio. In the case that you're reporting GAV at the asset level in the asset spreadsheet, there won't be any additional data input needed because that's the most granular level we need. So for those that are already reporting GAV at asset level, no changes. However, if you are not reporting GAV at asset level, there'll be changes to the R1.1 and R1.2, as well as DR1.1 and DR1.2, which is development in the assessment portal. So that's just something to reference as you're submitting the assessment in the assessment portal. It's just a quick change of logic, but not a huge, let's say, reporting burden by any means. Checking questions. I think that's fine so far. So I'll move to the next one. So this is around net zero target. So what is the requirement to receive full points for T1.2? So we do have a change in the way that we actually score net zero, or net zero targets are scored for 2024. Although that change is simply the existence of a net zero target. So what we're not scoring is whether it's science-based, it's a science-based target, whether it's externally communicated, it's simply the existence of a net zero target. And then the second question here, if a fund has already met their net zero target, are they ineligible for the points? No, it's really just the existence of a net zero target for the portfolio. It does not matter if it has been achieved or not. I think there's a couple more before I hand over to Anna. Yeah, I think this is maybe one of the last ones. So this is around LE6, which is ESG performance targets, and basically is evidence still required for this indicator? Yes, evidence is still required. As one of the tactical changes, which I'll just go ahead and switch to the next slide, is around the removal of non-financial consequences. So for those that are familiar with this indicator, there were two sections. Basically, do your ESG performance targets have financial consequences and non-financial consequences? You always had to document both, although non-financial consequences were always a bit squishy. They were difficult to document, etc. So what we've done is we've actually removed that part of the indicator so that does not have to be documented, as it doesn't exist. And basically, you can only respond yes to the indicator if your ESG performance targets have non-financial consequences. Let's see if country level benchmarking, I think there's just a couple more, Anna. I can't see my slide number, so I'll just keep moving. Can you provide any insight into how adding country and what the expected change in scoring and benchmark values? So of course, there's been a bunch of testing around this to understand what the impact will be on scoring, but it really depends on the countries that you operate in. I think the average change was something like 0.1, 0.2 points. So it's actually quite minimal in terms of bringing the granularity down to country. But of course, some of the countries that you operate in are more affected than others because we're bringing this down to a certain level. All of that's been tested. I suppose if you have specific questions, please feel free to reach out to us. But the general scoring impact is very, very minimal in terms of moving from asset level to country level. Sorry, regional level to country level. This is the intensity representativeness. So this is basically how do intensities qualify for that energy supplemental insight. This is all still being discussed and not finalized yet. So I think the 50% coverage yeah, it will be based, it's a floor area time weighted average. Customized peer groups. So this is also real estate specific. This is this was a feature introduced in 2023, which allowed participants to self-select a peer group based off of course, what their entity was classified as. Of course, the peer group was based off of. It's always been based off of your actual assets and sectors you operate in and location. But you were allowed to kind of zoom in or zoom out a little bit farther. In 2023. We're still finalizing the product development process for 2024 based off of member feedback and usability. So this is something that, will continue in 2024. But the comment here on there will be two different scores. Peer groups, and I will repeat, your peer group has nothing to do with your score. Your ranking in your peer group is essentially just how your score ranks within your peer group. So in general, your peer group has nothing to do with your score. Your score changing will not, it just affects simply your ranking within your peer group. So if you have questions about this and how best to represent this when speaking with investors, for example, please reach out to us because we have some nice text that can be sent out. But in general, yeah, your peer group, you still one GRESB score. Your peer group is not based on your score. Just checking, and then any of the questions, I think maybe we can just answer some of these at the end if there's some time, because I know we have got some more to go through. When will embodied carbon be scored and what is the expected data quality? Embodied carbon is a working group that will be launching in 2024. So we did have a lot of new data submitted within the development assessment this year for this. So just something that it's still to be determined. We don't have a timeline for when this will be scored, but we do have an embodied carbon working group for 2024. Asset spreadsheet changes. As I mentioned, there will be the new non-operational energy consumption column, and we'll be publishing the asset spreadsheet in early Q1. So this is being finalized at the moment. So there's really not a lot of changes to be expected. Custom peer groups in 2024. How will this appear in the benchmark report? Again, this is something that we're still developing from a product development perspective. If you do have feedback, or not again, but if you have feedback on this, please feel free to reach out to us. We've got the full product development team on top of this, just to make sure that the customized peer group remains relevant. And of course, we want to increase functionality moving into 2024, but that's still to be determined as to what happens. And any changes for the development benchmark. So at the moment, there's not any planned changes for the development component, which of course, management component, development component leads to the development benchmark. Although, as mentioned, the embodied carbon working group will be launched in 2024. So that it is expected, of course, embodied carbon is a highly relevant topic for development, and we want to integrate that better within the assessment, but that's still something to kind of be looked at via the working group. And then now over to you, Anna, to cover the next couple of questions from the infrastructure perspective.
Thank you, Kevin. So the first question is about probably one of the most significant changes coming to the asset assessment in 2024 around GHG emissions. One of the changes we'll be making is requesting participants to report on data coverage for scopes 1, 2, and 3 emissions. How will this impact your scoring? We're relocating 5% of the overall score for this indicator to this section. And what that means is the overall weight of GH1 in the assessment remains the same, but 5% of the points are now related to data coverage. In order to achieve full points for this section, you will need to report full coverage for both scope 1 and 2 emissions, so not scope 3. Next slide, please.
Yes, it should be up in a second. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Another question that came up is around the change coming up to indicator SE2, stakeholder group selection, where we basically consolidated this into 2 options, where you have contractors and suppliers for tier 1 and contractors and suppliers beyond tier 1, and of course the other option. The question here was if with these changes, participants will have to select the other option. That is not the case. So each of the 3 options is worth half of the points, meaning you will have to select 2 out of 3 in order to achieve full points. So either the 2 consolidated ones or one of those and the other option.
And next one should be up now. Is this one for you, Anna?
I mean, what I can say from the
Sure.
infrastructure
It's
side
kind of
is
an overall one.
it's
Yeah.
quite of an overall general question. Yeah, I mean, of course, our goal, I think, is always a little bit towards increasing the not the challenge in reporting, but increase a bit the difficulty level and to sort of challenge our participants to do better and improve. I don't know if from the real estate side, Kevin, there's anything you can add there.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it's a bit the same. So what we've done, of course, we've tested how the new changes will impact the assessment itself. I think I had some additional, I think on my next slide, it was showing specifically within real estate, there is expected changes to happen within scores. And that's literally because we've allocated some points from indicators to new indicators that will be scored. So in terms of the country level benchmarking or the building certification scoring logic, that's expected to have minimum impact, like very minimal impact. Whereas of course here, if we look at T1.1 and T1.2 on this slide with performance targets, if you don't have a net zero target, your score will drop by 1 if you did have performance targets last year. So there's kind of direct, it's easy to kind of map what will change. Anna, did I miss one of your slides or did we cover all of yours?
No, I think we've covered the infra-specific questions. Thanks,
okay,
Kevin.
Great. Yeah, so this is a kind of the, again, tactical changes scoring here. Bearing in mind we do just have a few minutes left, let me just have a quick look at the other slides towards the end, or if I want to answer some of the live questions. Just give me 1 second as I kind of mentally assess what I would like to do. Yeah, I'll turn it over to the chat just for a second. So there was one question around basically, and it was one of the first ones asked around WELL and British Safety Council's occupational health and safety audits and these certifications. So it's the WELL performance rating. So basically, if you do not see certifications in the list of valid certifications that are recognized within GRESB, that means they've not been submitted to us for evaluation. GRESB does not actively seek out certifications. We're not, staying on top of the market to look, oh, this new one's launched, let's see if we can add it. We expect participants to bring those to us if they have them present in their portfolios. And maybe I'll just move to the last slide. So we've got a nice, we're not confused by the other one. So yes, if their certification is not on the list, please feel free just to submit them to GRESB or our evaluation form. There's kind of a process to look at that. So these two, for example, I don't think have been submitted to us. There's a fun one around non-operational energy use. Does that include snow melting? I cannot tell you the answer to that question. The real estate team can, but I know we're currently investigating what other non-operational energy uses are. So yes, including snow melting, not sure. But we can add that to kind of our list of things we're investigating in terms of non-operational energy use. There's one around as real estate portfolios are growing and acquiring more assets, how does this affect the energy performance score of standing investments? So what we've always done from an energy perspective in carbon and water from that perspective is when we look at like for like, so basically year over year changes, the asset has to have been owned for 24 months to qualify for this score. So basically, as you're acquiring more assets, of course, this can affect your energy intensity. But what we do is look at comparability year over year to make sure that remains applicable. And simply just because you have a growing portfolio, of course, you're going to increase energy consumption, but you have to normalize that somehow. Of course, looking per square meter via an energy intensity is a way to do that. There's another question around when will this 2024 standards be released officially? So this is something our member success team is currently working on, publishing the reference guide and all of the supporting documentations in early Q1. So yes, those are on target to be released. I think it's even from mid-January. But as mentioned, basically what we're doing is we're taking the list of assessment changes that have been published for all of the assessments, and we're just simply kind of adding those in to the reference guide. So the reference guide will not be any different from that perspective. Let's see if there's another question. Anna, I don't think there were any infrastructure specific.
No, I don't see anything infra specific.
Yeah. Okay. I do see one on RM 6.1 to 6.4, which is applicable, I think, for kind of all assessments at GRESB around the evidence that's required for the 2024 submission. So we're currently building out the validation guidance for this, which will be included with the reference guide when it's released in mid-January. So that is more information to come on this. So that's really all of the questions that I think I would like to answer in live. Anna, unless there's anything else from your perspective, I think we can close out the event right on time. Yeah, so let's go forward with that. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining. We have another session tonight. If you'd like to join that one for any reason, totally relevant, not really sure why I said that, but we'll keep moving. Thanks for everyone for joining. Hope you have a nice Wednesday, and please reach out if you have any questions, and we'll come back to those that were not answered live one-on-one. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.